You've found AHO Radio. We're authentic human outliers coming together to help heal the fear of being authentic. To bring back genuine human conversation. No hype, no sensationalism, just honest talk about the critical issues affecting society, affecting humankind. And now, here are the hosts of AHO Radio, John Krotec and Bill Protzmann.
Hey, John. How's things this morning?
Hey, West Coast of Florida, we're doing great. Every time I hear those drums, and we've said this a million times, it just gets the heartbeat going. It gets the blood flowing. It's like, and Valerie's over there, Valerie Sheppard, our great guest today. As you can tell, she's got the vibe going on. And
oh, yeah.
Pleased to be here and with you, Bill, for sure. How's it out in California?
I'm a this West African drummer, so.
Yeah.
I haven't been to drum class in a while, but I try.
I was so glad to find those drums. It just, when you're listening to stuff and something just sort of locks in and you just know, yeah. And that's what it was, I
was talking to these guys up on the reservation this morning, and they were talking about tribes. And they were telling me, we're all from tribes. We're in different places of reality. And they were telling me this morning, you make your own reality. You're creative. We all know this. And how do you take that creativity into being responsible and doing something that is meaningful? But anyhow, super excited
how do you do that?
I don't know. Yeah. I gotta disagree with you on one thing there, John. I don't think we all know that we're creative. That we're all.
No, we don't. No.
Yeah. We have to come awake, right?
Yeah, I didn't know. I used to say I have one famous time of when I was being interviewed for a job. And I didn't get this job. And the person asked me about my creativity. And I actually answered in all truthfulness, well, I don't think I'm very creative. I'm really highly analytical. Like, I really believe that.
Yeah, that was you at the time, right?
Yeah, that's where I was then.
Yeah.
Thankfully. And I was very creative. I didn't actually acknowledge that aspect of me because I thought what was going to make me successful, especially as a Black woman in this country in the 70s, was not my creativity. It was going to be my intellectual horsepower. And that's what I invested in. And that's what I prided myself on demonstrating.
Yeah.
So it's important to know yourself, though, right? And we grow up and then we continue to grow up and you learn things about yourself. Like I just learned about myself yesterday, things I didn't know. And if you're not doing that work, I mean, what other work is there to do, right? That's the fun stuff.
Yeah, it is fun. My own therapy throughout the years with my own story, I have found that you have to take responsibility. And when we don't do that is when we run the risk of staying in that dark place, and I'm glad you pointed that out, Valerie, because when you finally dig into the deep stuff, you have the ability, and I know you've done a lot of deep stuff. I've read your bio. When you dig into that deep stuff and you start to percolate who we are and what that means, this guy was telling me this morning, John, find your own reality. I said, I'm looking for it, like every day.
Yeah.
What is my reality? So yeah, just super cool to have you here. And I can't wait to hear your story and learn about your book and all the great work that you have done with, mastering ourselves.
So our guest this morning is Valerie Sheppard. And if you are at all connected to YouTube, you will find Valerie all over the place.
Really?
And we need this. We need
more pictures. They're beautiful. Look at this picture right behind.
Yeah. I mean, it's so there are truth tellers out there. Valerie, you're one of them. And we kind of do this backwards. We do the big reveal later on to talk about what you do. But who you are is the thing that's so intriguing to us on Authentic Human Outliers Radio, because in many ways, a lot of us who are pushing the envelope are out there on the outlier edge. We're on some like to say the bleeding edge, and yeah, it does bleed from time to time. But it's so great to be able to welcome you here and to offer a place where you can share your authenticity and hopefully lead other people by example to being more authentic versions of themselves. Isn't that strange? I mean, we're doing that all the time. I mean, I just deepened yesterday. So, hey, good morning. How are you? Welcome aboard.
Good morning. John and Bill. This is such a delight, and thank you for greeting me with drums. I think the ancestors are dancing, and we're ready to play. And
Awesome.
I'm just so honored and pleased and thrilled to be here. And you know, in honor of that, my nose started to run.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is an awesome time, and authenticity. All of the stuff that you talk about is the richness in that, and the different angles in those topics are really exciting to me. And so I'm really glad to be here.
So this is
Awesome.
a long question, but how did you come to do the work that you do? Like what inside you led you in that direction from the interview that from that point until today? Like what inside what was the internal compass pointing toward?
The compass was pointing toward there must be more than this. And the question was, is this really my life? I had gotten to a place where I was supposedly uber successful. I mean, I'm not as successful as billionaires and millionaires, but I was on the path, and I thought I was, you know, I was doing some, the juju. I was a vice president of a big corporation, Fortune 250, and running close to $1 billion portfolio, 900 plus $1 million portfolio of brands. I was living in this lovely 24-hour guard gated community in a beautiful house, and I'm driving my convertible Saab, and I thought I was, I was the stuff, the shizzle, as they say. And my life was so wonderful. So I thought. And things started to unravel. And there were days when I came, like I talk in my book, like 300 some odd days. I come down the elevator, and on the way to my car, I'm in tears. And by the time I get to my car, I'm crying. Because what was true was I wasn't happy at all. I was living a life where I felt like I was having to be a chameleon. And this is no blame on anyone. I take full responsibility for what was going on with me. So, I was trying to be a chameleon. I was trying to do what I thought I had to do to be successful, not what I wanted to do. I thought I was also, I didn't know this then, I know now, I was not being who I truthfully am. I was being, again, these conditioned patterns of behavior, and a lot of them rooted in some dark stuff. A lot of the patterns of behavior were rooted in belief systems that came from ancestral energy and also came from conditioning in the 60s. And I got to a place where I was like, okay, if this isn't really supposed to be my life, what is? And so I went on a several years journey of introspection and spiritual awakening and dynamic spiritual teachers and certifications and a number of different things to figure out what's going on below the surface. And that's what put me on this path. It felt like the minute I discovered it and I could distill it from all these different things that I did and distill it into, oh, it's this, then it felt really like I had to give it away, right? It's like when you discover something that can support other people, not everybody, I'm not the juice for everyone to drink, but there are a lot of people who are at the exact place where what I'm teaching works for them. And so it just became kind of obvious, and the call from the divine was pretty loud to give it away.
You mentioned two things that just stick out to me right away. Unhappiness and responsibility and darkness, maybe the third thing, darkness, because we all go to those places, or we have been there. I read a report, an article the other day. It was a survey that was taken, people of all colors, both genders, different socioeconomic categories, and they came up with 92%. I'd have to find that article, but 92% of those people who were surveyed were not happy with where they were at in life.
Wow.
And so if we think about that, 90 out of 100 people that we pass every day is in an unhappy place. And I know you've probably heard of Sadhguru. Sadhguru, he's this Hindu guy on YouTube as well. He's got these videos, but he talks about one person out of 100, his experience is on this journey for high consciousness and enlightenment. And then there's only 10% out of 100 are actually working in the worlds that you're talking about. So wow, the world, and then there's other stats out there, but the world is broken. And 70% of people out there have been traumatized by at least one major event in their life. And this is all peoples. And, it could be financial ruin, sexual assault. It can be bullying. It can be racism, all this trauma, humankind, all of those and everything else. Yeah. And that's, I'm childhood sexual assault guy and traumatic brain injury and all these lovely things that happen to humans. And so here we are on Authentic Human Outliers, and we're trying to connect dots, and you have been connecting a lot of dots. So tell us a little bit about, the book, Living Happy to Be Me. Tell us a little bit about that book.
Oh, I so love that you asked.
This book behind me right here.
And this book behind me.
That's the one.
You got the same one.
Yes, I do. I love this book. I guess, am I allowed to say that? I'm being authentic. I love this book.
Absolutely.
A lot of what I feel is divine energy came through me to go in that book. There were several times where I was like, really? I'm really supposed to write this? But when you do something and you go back and look at it and you kind of go, wow, I did that. That's one of the few things in my life that I do that with. There are others, but nothing as profound for me as Living Happy to Be Me, Dancing Your Soul Light Style. The book is the distillation of all the different teachings. When I started looking at all the stuff I was looking at, and like, okay, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. This is how you do it. And then I would try it on and practice and move in certain directions and move around. And the movement is where the word dance came from in the title, the movement of me, the movement of the divine within me and as me and through me. Like all of that felt like dancing. But the book is an effort to show people that there's only really, according to all these different practices and all these different, from the Vedas to the, to Christianity, there's only one way to have true happiness. And the book talks about happiness because that's the way in. I mean, I'm really talking about bliss. I'm really talking about joy. I'm really talking about your divinity. But happiness is what people are looking for. So like you said, 90% of people don't have it and want it. So I talk about that as a way to get them to look at the higher level issue is raise your consciousness.
Yeah.
Like the object of raising one's consciousness. And I write this in the dedication to the book. It's the only way I've discovered of really having true happiness. But by true happiness, I call it authentic happiness. What I mean is it's unconditional. It's not dependent on what's happening out there. It's really dependent on my vantage point, my perspective on myself, who I am in the world, who I'm being, and how the world works. And so that raising of the consciousness allows me to tap in, tune in, turn on, as Abraham Hicks would say, to the divine moving in everything, like an omnipresent. And I'm a monotheist, so I believe in one God, many paths, right? Like, you can get to the city of Cincinnati through a lot of different paths. And so the one divine principle, which I believe is unconditional love. And there are many paths to be in that blissful space of, I am being love. I am being the love I came here to be, no matter what. And not an easy task, but it is a commitment. And so that's what the book is about, raising one's consciousness as a way to experience what you really want to experience in your life. It's more than just happiness, but you can't get any of it without elevating elevating yourself into the essential nature that you are. And that's what the capital ME in the book stands for. So if I break down the title, living means it's a way of life. It's not, read a book and you're done, go on to the next thing, 2 principles. And it's not that. It's about a 24/7, 365 experience of yourself as divine principle in motion. And then happy is the joy, bliss. And then to be is we are humans doing. We're not humans being. And so I learned that about myself and how powerful it is to get into a state of beingness as opposed to doing, like be, do, have. I talk about that in the book. And then the capital M-E, people often think that it's like me yelling, I'm happy to be me. No, I'm not. The M-E stands for magnificent essence, which is the divine principle that is at once moving in, through, and around everything on the world, in the world, and the universe. It is who we are. We are integrated spiritual humans. And that is what I talk about, that most of us are taught to learn as humans. I'm only human, instead of integrating this other aspect of the self and hanging out there when we're driving, when we're shopping, when we're walking, when we're teaching, when we're making the donuts, whatever that is. And then the dancing is the getting.
No, go ahead. Finish up the title. I'm sorry. I'll ask you afterward.
So the dancing is
dancing.
Like, at any given moment, there's a lot going on. Like right now in the world, there is a lot going on, and you do a dip down, and the ugly stuff comes up, and the kooky stuff happens, and then I'm still there, right? I'm still here. So the dance is how do we flow, be in flow with all that's happening. And the last word is the soul light style. And I did that word on purpose. It's not lifestyle, it's light. Because when you elevate your consciousness, all of a sudden you're up above all that muck and yuck. And it's like this lightness of being that you can take on to create the kind of life that you really want.
Just elevated me. I just got goosebumps like everywhere. When you said that light style, I love that. That's pretty cool.
I was going to ask you how you do this painlessly, because in my life, it doesn't seem to be pain-free. Like awareness comes with, or pain comes before awareness. Have you ever had that experience of just being able to get into the knowing without having to wander through the jungle to get there?
I have, but not back then.
Right, yes.
As a part of spiraling up, right, I go deeper. I always say this, deeper into my consciousness, higher into my soul, like higher into the divine. So the more I go deep and understand what's rolling around down there, I call it the iceberg below the surface, right? What sunk the Titanic wasn't the part of the iceberg that they could see with the binoculars. It was the part that was way deep under the water. And for all of us, there are icebergs underneath us. And the authenticity comes from being able to go in there and know what it is. When I say self-mastery, it's about knowing who you are at the core, at a deep level, knowing why you say this word instead of that word, knowing why you feel comfortable over here instead of over there, knowing why when somebody gives you a certain kind of look, what goes on inside you and what do you think is happening. And so this whole idea of, can I get to the juicy core without going through the jungle, or sometimes for me, it's felt like crawling over glass, broken glass. Maybe not, maybe so. When I talk to my students about it, this whole idea, and I don't know that I like to enforce duality, like you can't have joy without having pain. I don't know how I feel about that still. I'm still dancing with those statements. But what I tell my students and clients is, if you're feeling pain on your way to getting to this higher vibration of you, it's just your soul giving you an opportunity to release the pain. The universal laws operate in the universe just like gravity. So spiritual laws are governing the universe less like physical laws. So know it or not, understand it or not, like it or not, there's this law of resistance, right? Scientists have proven this. Law of resistance. When you put a force out there to resist what's happening, the force actually creates the energy that perpetuates what's happening. So the more I fight against dealing with, like right now, what I'm going through, and I can feel the waves of emotion, what's wanting to be released from me is there's some ancestral energy that comes from the slave history of my family. with all this racial tension and unrest, there's a lot coming up. It's coming up in me, it's coming up through me. And so when I can sit with it and like be at peace, call in peace, understand it, like go to it, go to the pain and say, okay, you got my attention. What is it that, what's going on here? Like, what did you come to teach me, to show me? How is your presence, the loving opening through which I can walk to a higher vibration of self, and as a result, attracts more of what I want and less of what I don't.
Yeah, I love the way you say that. And it's deep, a couple of the things too. I'm not sure either about the duality statements, because I it's not really where my mind goes. I'm always thinking of something positive, no matter what's going on around me, which is a resilience journey from being assaulted at such a young age. But you mentioned a second ago, a couple minutes ago, you mentioned about the work, and Bill brought pain into it, but the work, and it's not easy, because when I went back to my own lineage, my white ancestors were enslaved by Muslims for over 400 years. And I'm like, holy cow, what the heck was going on there? And then it was the Turkish, and then it was the Serbians. And finally, my grandfather got out of Dodge, so to speak. And I don't know if I ever felt the pain of racism like a Black American would feel it. I mean, I did live in the Virgin Islands for a couple of years, and I got banged around, but it was always my Black Island friends that came to my defense. So I have felt it in more of a topical way, but maybe not so much in a soul way, because my ancestors kind of got away from it. They got away from that Serbian hatred that my grandfather had. And so I woke up at a young age saying, this is not supposed to be like this. Am I supposed to feel this kind of pain in the third grade? And so, I guess it's whoever suffers the best. Bill and I have had that conversation before. Whoever kind of suffers through the pain and shelves it. And I can tell just by looking at you, and I've never met you, but I can tell that you have got an amazing spirit just by looking at you. And then the way the way it comes out, it couldn't be any more authentic. So, tell us a little bit more, Valerie, about the work that you're talking about, because I know you've been to tons of workshops. And you've actually led some. Tell us about that.
Yes, I do. And I teach I created a course based on my book, a curriculum that I was teaching at the University of California, Irvine for several years. And it's called Living 101, when 101 being happy and whole. And so that is the journey to inner happiness, authentic happiness, and also wholeness. So I told a story at the beginning of our conversation about this thirst for the intellect without really understanding how creativity contributed to that, right? And so that wasn't being a whole person. I was faithfully honoring and cultivating my brain and leaving my heart behind. And I even had a Jiwangjanim. I used to do a Korean style of movement and Qigong and yoga. And the Jiwangjanim was the highest person running the center. And he said, all of your energy stop here. Like the rest of your body is cold and you are hot-headed. And the whole idea is to be cool-headed and have your body flow warm energy. So that was part of the journey. But the work is always about that. It's about integrating your life into being this whole spiritual human entity and walking as the divinity that you are through the density of the third dimension called Earth. So the density of Earth has things like racism. It has things like classism. It has things like poverty. It has things like disease. It has things like fires. It has all kinds of dense kind of experiences. And then we can bring the intellect of the human and the imagination, intuition, inspiration of the divine in to solve these problems. One of my favorite quotes from a great intellect, Albert Einstein, is that the intuitive mind is a sacred gift. The conscious mind is its faithful servant. We have created a society that worships the servant and has forgotten the gift.
Yeah.
And that's exactly who I was being. You know, I was worshiping the brain and I'd forgotten about my heart. And now I'm a practitioner and a student of heart math. And I understand the power of the intuitive mind and the intuitive ability in the heart. And so the work is about getting deep. I talk in my book about having been disconnected from my heart, but I kept feeling a call. I kept feeling it calling me. And I guarantee you that of those 90% of people who are not feeling fulfilled and content and happy in their lives, there's a call. Some of them may hear it and it may show up as a car accident. It may show up as a life-threatening illness. It may show up as a breakup or financial ruin. There are things in our lives that are constantly trying to get our attentions. And to the extent that we're willing to wake up from the illusion, to wake up in our lives, we'll hear that call. And then the work is about following the little breadcrumbs in the self-mastery quest. So knowing where does my anger come from? That was the big one for me. Like what propelled me forward was anger. And I love being propelled forward, but I want it to be inspiration. I want it to be a calling. I want it to be the divine. I want there to be sweetness, juiciness, deliciousness. I don't want to be propelled anymore by this angry thing inside me that came from the past, my past and my ancestral heritage through, you know, the study of epigenetics is proving now that people carry stuff from
The memories stay forever, you know, genetic.
DNA.
Yeah.
It's
Pretty.
One of the things we have a responsibility to do right now is to ensure that future generations don't have this crap that's in our DNA. Like we need to heal ourselves, if only for the sake of the future. Like right now is really important, but this epigenetics should have everybody going, what am I giving to my, like to not just to your kids, but offspring generations forward are going to feel what's going on with us. We need to do something about that. Like take responsibility, no blame, no shame, no guilt, no punishment. Just own it. Wow. How am I being better than I was yesterday? I mean, I cannot tell you how much is coming up for me about me relative to the racial dance that we're doing right now. Like I wrote on my Facebook page that awarenesses are coming that have me understand how complicit I have been in some of the ways the dynamics have played out, that there is conditioning. You know, I don't blame myself. I know where it came from, but I bought in.
Yeah, you know how you fit into the picture. I
got
that yesterday. When I watched 13 yesterday, I felt how I fit in finally.
Yes.
You know, it was all out there and then suddenly it came home. So as somebody who has been through that journey, when you see someone who's just starting that journey, give that person some words of encouragement, because it feels really terrible to be, you know, like the guilty white guy or whatever your box is. You try to break out of that. It feels awful, the first step away from that box. What do you say to somebody there?
Well, I think the very first words that are coming to me are, I love you. So those are the first words. I think those would be great words for everyone to say whenever they're confronted with somebody who's just starting down this path. Just say, I love you. Just be love for them. We're not responsible for their path. Like that's their path. And then I think it's important to say, keep going. Like what we're trying to do right now is build, as Carolyn Mace would say, build a soul with stamina. Be a soul with stamina. You know, John, you were talking about the resiliency of your ancestors coming through you and how you've overcome sexual abuse trauma and how you're still on this journey to be the light in spite of what you feel as darkness within you. And that's all of us. Like that's all of us, regardless of what traumas caused us to choose this path versus that path. We've all got them. So the I love you, keep going, I'm here for you. So it's not about I'm going to pull them into the light. I tell my students in my Living 101 class, on the first couple days of class, I talk to them about some students inevitably raise their hands. And I have some that I'm still in contact with today who are atheists. And I'm a spiritual teacher. My course says spiritual development. The book has spiritual, the book in the first class, we don't use my book until the advanced class, but the book we use in the first class has spirituality in the title, right? So they're atheists signing up for this class that's called Living 101, Being Happy and Whole, where the book is spirituality. And I say to them, I'm not here to drag you into Christianity or spirituality. I don't care. Like, what I'm here to do is to offer you a way of life that can support you to be happy and whole. You choose. Ultimately, you choose. It's working for me, and I'm happy to work with anyone who wants to work with the principles and the teachings. I believe it's going to work, and you have to choose it. So for each of those people who's like, maybe, and I won't say confronting, I will say,
yeah, it feels more like you're dragged kicking and screaming.
yeah. So I will say, to a person who is now maybe meeting for the first time, the part of them that's been complicit silently, subconsciously, unconsciously in the racial trauma that is still, plaguing the United States, to be tender, to be in self-love, to be in forgiveness. Forgiveness and self-love, all forgiveness has to start here first. Like, I have to do it for myself. Otherwise, whatever I give out there is half-baked, right? If I have to be loving of the foibles and the mistakes and the low consciousness version of me as I am creating a higher consciousness version. So to that person, I would say, go easy, be tender, like, take your time, and by all means, go deep. This is not a surface level journey. And there are a lot of people who will tell you it's not. And I'm one who professes, no, this is calling you, and it's going to require you to go below the surface. The surface is where you've been living. How's that been going? Like, I talk to my students, like, why there are 100 faces looking at me. And I'm like, why are you in this classroom? Because it ain't going that well living on the surface. So you might want to join me in the deep dive. And they do. And we have some amazing stories and testimonials. So I hope I answered your question.
Oh, I think so. Absolutely. There's so many ways to engage with you. We'll get to all of those, of course. But the fact that you're out there offering this kind of work is so important right now. It's so important right now. And the voices like ours are small and quiet, but incredibly powerful. And the hard thing is always trusting that the right people are in the room. Somehow or another, that somebody's going to be changed. So when you were first beginning this work, how did you think, oh my gosh, I've got to share this. How am I going to do it? What was that experience like, transforming from, like the corporate executive to the spiritual teacher? In that moment, what was it like for you?
It was the moment of thinking, okay, I'm going to go out there and be a spiritual teacher, was probably 2.5 years long. And by that, I mean, I really was uncomfortable, and I didn't trust myself. I didn't, I wasn't doing this from a place of having gone to theology school. I wasn't doing this with my MDiv. I don't have
Yeah.
a master's in divinity. And so there was a lot of imposter syndrome. There was a lot of, why would anybody listen to me? And the more that I sat with that, the more I got messaging from humans as a deliverer, and also from, in my meditations and like direct, just keep going. And none of them said, when I said, should I go to divinity school? And at one point I was thinking about doing a field licensing through the Unity Church, the Unity Ministry. And I kind of let that go. And part of it was because what I knew from self-mastery work was that driver inside me to go get more intellectually based, credentialized knowledge about this topic was the part of me that always, well, that has in the past felt deeply inadequate and deeply unlovable and deeply not enough without those things. It's what I said at the top of our discussion, the intellect. And so there was a drive to go get more credentials, and then I would be enough, and go get more credentials, and then I'll be safe, and go get more credentials, and then I'll be okay. And part of my journey has been to detach from that, and to know that that's coming from some very low consciousness, conditioned patterns of belief about myself as a Black woman in this country in the 60s, and the ancestral energy. And so I didn't go do those things. I still read books. I read a lot of books, and I listen, but I don't carry credentials saying I'm the one you should talk to about your spiritual development. I just kind of hung out a shingle and went and did it. One thing that has helped me is believe it or not, the creative side of me. So I've been on stage or acting in very amateur and sometimes goofy ways since I was like 3 years old. I'm a professional improv comedian. I'm on leave of absence since the brain hemorrhage, but I have been on stage. I've been on camera. I have been, I'm a part of an Emmy-nominated cast of a children's show. So there's a lot I've done being on stage and in front of. And I think that training, I believe the divine uses that ability in me as a part of my ability to teach. So I don't feel the fear of stage fright. I may feel the fear of, do I know this topic well enough? Can I quote the Quran well enough? Do I know the Bhagavad Gita? Can I bring it into this conversation? And can I talk to my Jewish students as well as I can talk to my Christian students, as well as I can talk to my atheist students? That kind of fear is what I get around. Can I bring inspiration and aspiration to life in them?
Mm-hmm.
That's around the topics of who am I, what am I doing here, and how can I serve?
No, you are definitely living proof that you're dancing your soul light style. There's no doubt. And you've reinforced some things that I think are important to know, for people to know. Love does work. Love saved my marriage when I was in the middle of my divorce, and it took a lot of effort. But another thing too, the keep going part has been a hashtag of mine for like 6 years now. So that's kind of interesting, never.
Hashtag keep on keeping on, baby.
I love that. But the cool thing about what I love about what you've done, is that you have found the purpose, but you've been able to take this disconnect that you described between the head and the heart, and you have found your own your own recipe from the divine, but it's working. And what I get from you, again, it's like all this techno stuff, is that I feel a spiritual consciousness. And I also see a woman, Black woman, American, with this lineage that knows how to use it through the school of hard knocks and experience. And that's the power of your intellect that I know. I mean, it's all these things coming down at once. And living proof is why you're having such a tremendous impact on people's lives, because you're not just topically talking about deep stuff. You're living it at a core level, which is where most people, I truly believe, want to go. Because I really believe most people want to be better. They may be on a different wavelength.
Yeah.
But you're helping them find that. And that to me is just, like I said, third time I've had goosebumps. That is so impressive to meet a real spiritual, loving human being that wants to make a difference on this planet. And if I never meet you in person, just this hour interview is enough to float my boat for quite a long time. I'm just telling you that. And I'm not blowing smoke.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate that. deeply.
You are an awesome person, big time. And I know you didn't need me and Bill to tell you that, but I love what you're doing. And tell me, self-mastery, you kind of went a little bit on it, but tell me about the Hartley Center. What's going on at the Hartley Center?
The Hartley Center for Mindfulness and Self-Mastery is a fledgling version of what I see in the big picture, the bigger picture. So I have this massive vision, and I'm learning about myself that I often create massive visions, and then it takes me forever to get there because I'm not taking the little intermediate steps. So I'm still in my growth pattern, my growth around what has been implanted, what is the seed within me that wants to blossom, and how to go about that. So it's a fledgling of the vision, but the Hartley Center for Mindfulness and Self-Mastery is all about conquering the world with love. People say that, you want to conquer the world? And I'm like, yeah, baby, with love. So it's about self-mastery, as I define, mastering yourself in your life so that you can exquisitely manage whatever your life brings your way. And so exquisitely manage means when I see things like my bank account's empty, or when I see things like filing for bankruptcy, or when I see things like I'm at a crossroads and I don't know whether I should keep this job or go for what I really want. I don't like this job, but it pays the bills, but that's what I want. And I feel that's what I'm called to. So self-mastery says, just like I could understand that I didn't need to go get a credential just to soothe the ego, that why would I go get it? Like, is there something to cultivate that would actually be the right thing to do? So, and mindfulness is about the being part of the name of my book, coming into a stillness, a place of respite in here. Like going on vacation, I have a meditation chair. So going on vacation by lighting a candle, sitting in my meditation chair and just getting still. Like that is what the Hartley Center is about. And so right now, the center is housed on a website, and soon coming, my course at the University of California is going to go from being a face-to-face synchronously taught course to being available digitally, so that students can take it, students of any age can take it wherever they are, not having to be wherever I am. So that's coming. We have this vision for a beautiful event called the Wholeness Palooza. And
nice. That's really cool.
That's being developed. So the Hartley Center is, I don't know if it might be embryonic. It's actually in the world, so I guess it's got to be beyond embryonic. But the things that I see for the Hartley Center are still developing, and part of that is the gestation in me of my most powerful self. That's still happening.
That's just awesome.
I love that you're putting this out there this way. The world needs it so much. And
yeah.
I'm always amazed at how new teachers show up. You know, we've had so many people teaching Christianity, for example, for a long time. And I'm sure that's probably true for Judaism and Muslim. For all the monotheistic religions, we've had thousands of years of people teaching Tibetan Buddhism. And every iteration, there's a new voice, a new teacher. Somebody shows up who is just like the right individual to lead the world at that time in this way. And maybe it's leading the entire world. Maybe it's leading 3 people. Who knows? But there's a leader that shows. And it's beautiful to me that things like Stoicism have been rediscovered. Mm-hmm. And, who was it? Ryan Holiday that wrote those incredible Stoic books. So there's a beauty about the rhythm of the rediscovery of what matters. And it's great to be in this lane, because I feel a little bit, I'm at a different sort of place in life, but I feel an invitation, maybe is the right word, to continue to do this work. Just listening to you talk about how you're doing it for you And it's, I mean, people, it's hard, and it's a tough sell, because the answer to the question of, well, what do you get when it's all done, is that you get more of the same but worse. You get, it goes deeper and it feels worse, but the results are so huge. So every time you expand that bandwidth, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually it's like the weight of the world. But oh my gosh, there are inspiring people out there who make it easy, and oh, bless you for
Well,
saying
you
way
reminded me of this
forward is
Jackie Shannon
that.
song. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. And
Oh, yeah.
that song, I think a lot of people have heard it, but
Well, the next line is really important too. It's the only thing that there's just too little
Too
of.
little of, yeah.
And you brought new meaning. I've been listening to that song ever since I was a squirt, right? But
wait, John,
Valerie
Jackie
Sheppard,
Chan, that's Carpenter's, isn't it?
Jackie Shannon, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, I got to look that
They
up.
might have done the cover on it, but Valerie Sheppard has brought new meaning to that song.
Absolutely, amen.
And I just put the lyrics there for you all to goof around with it, but they're deep, and I didn't even know the second line. So,
well, just to know. So, just first of all, one of the things I love most about that song, one of the lyrics, is the word "sweet," because I talk about juicy deliciousness being in my life. I talk about sweetness, like when I started looking at my emotional eating. I got really clear on, I never had a sweet tooth, but I would have these urges where I just had to have ice cream. And I learned to ask myself, so what is the sweetness that's missing from my life that I think the ice cream's going to bring? And then I go get that. I go do the sweetness part. So maybe I haven't done enough prayer today, or maybe I'm not done enough gratitude today, or maybe I haven't talked to a friend who's dear to me today. And when I give myself the sweetness in that form, it doesn't need to come from a sweet treat. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it's champagne, no matter what. But other times I have to know, what is my body really calling to me for? So I love that word, sweet. And then I would go back to the second line. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. And I would clarify, love, unconditional love, is in abundance in the universe. It is what the universe is made of. The universe was created out of that principle. Like, that principle created all of us. So why is there stuff that looks not like love? Like, that's the thing we should all be asking, not on the global scale, but like in me.
Yeah, right
if
here.
I am unconditional love, why did I just speak that way to that person? Right? No blame, no shame, no guilt, no punishment, just a curious inquiry into who am I being, and why is that acceptable to me? I don't care if they like it or not. Why is that what I came here to be? We've seen a lot of videos lately that I've said a couple times, my heart's broken so many times over the last 4 weeks. I don't know how much more there is
it's
to go.
been crazy, yeah.
But so many videos of like the danger of living while Black, and I encourage and invite those people, like, to all of those people who are being labeled all kinds of things, which we don't have to use in this program. I will say to them, I love you. And I encourage and invite you, John, here's the invitation. I encourage and invite you to go deep. Watch that tape of yourself. Look at who's coming up. Not from a judgment place, but like, there was one of those videos that I saw, and I could swear I saw the moment when that person shifted into a vibration that was so low and so disgusting. We have marches all over the world, right? I could see it, and I'm not the only one, I'm sure. But so if I look back at tapes of me and I see myself being something I'm not, like a lot of these people are saying, well, that's not really me, and I don't know what came over me. Well, it's time to go find out.
Yeah.
One of the pivotal questions that I ask my students and my clients to keep front and center: who am I being when I think I'm being me? Who am I being when I'm ripping someone's head off and I'm thinking I'm justified in it? Wow, where did that anger and hatred come from? Who am I being when I'm shrinking back from saying what's real and true for me? Like, where's that fear? Where's that terror coming from? Who am I being when I'm being the love that I am? Like, who's that? Where's that coming from? How do I tap in, tune in, turn on to more of that and be a stand for that in a strong and empowered way, where I'm not resisting what I don't want, but I am damn sure standing proud and tall and being a compassionate advocate for what I do want.
So how do you answer that question? Like, give us an example of how that works for you.
So who am I being? So when I asked myself, when I was watching 13th, and I was asking myself, wow. So this is a little, I hope this isn't too whiny a story. I've talked, I think, publicly about never feeling like I had a home. So not white. And for a lot of the Black people in my history, I wasn't Black enough either. And I talk about the story of being in high school. I really was raised in the white culture. My father, career Marine officer, had the ability to have us live in certain neighborhoods, and that's where he put us. And they were predominantly white neighborhoods. We went to predominantly white schools, and we were close enough to the school to walk. Well, many of the people of color were bused in. And so in my elementary, junior high, and high school life that spanned couple states, because military, the school bus, I could hear and I would hate this one path that I would walk to school, because I could hear those. Remember when the school buses had those windows where you pushed in the two things?
Yeah.
Would go down.
They would go down.
And they would just slam down. And there was no intermediate. It was like up or down. And so they would push the two things, and I would hear the windows clamp, clamp, clamp. The windows would go down, and the kids would yell Oreo out the window. And it was deeply troubling to me. It deeply hurt me. And when I watched 13th last night, I came into a new awareness of that's me. Like a new awareness of how much my conditioning has had me hold racist beliefs toward other Black people, toward myself. There's racial self-hatred from the traumas of enduring what it means to be Black. That doesn't mean I don't like being Black. It means I've hated what I've had to deal with as a Black person. Yeah. And so the who am I being comes up when I hear myself say things like, well, maybe they're supposed to be in prison, right? Looking at that and going, who was that? Oh, that's the conditioned pattern of a person who was taught that she isn't okay. Like her race, there's something wrong with the people in her race, which by the way includes herself. When I see myself being angry, like saying stuff to people in anger, I look at that and go, okay, what was that about? So then the first thing I have to do is look at them. What did they say that triggered me? How were they being that triggered me? And if you think about, remember that old game, Operation?
Oh yeah.
The funny bone and all.
Yeah, you had to try and get things out of it without the lights going off and stuff. Yeah. So obviously they pinged some light. They pinged me, right? So what did they ping? So when I look at that, who am I being? Am I being the angry auntie? Or am I being the, lifetimes, epigenetics, am I being the forlorn slave? Like, I think there's some victim energy in me, which sometimes prevents me from stepping forward in faith and trust. So I work with my spiritual counselor on how do I deal with that. So
what's interesting too, you so eloquently put it was about conditioning. And for me, my dad grew up in Pittsburgh, right? Real rough part of Pittsburgh. It was a white Croatian neighborhood. And if he strayed into the Russian neighborhood, he would get his rear end kicked. And if he went over into the kind of like a miniature Europe, I guess. So when he went over into the Romanian section, so he grew up with a name, not for different races of people, but names, derogatory names for different nationalities. And the only thing that got him out of what I called the Pittsburgh ghetto, because it was a rough section of town, the house where he was born is still there, was because he could play football, right? And so he got a football scholarship. It wasn't because of his cerebral, although I think he had some good intelligence, but then he met my mom down here in the South, and he never went back to Pennsylvania. But growing up as a young kid, hearing all this, he made Archie Bunker look like a Boy Scout. And he literally had a name and a demeanor for every nationality on the face of the planet. If you weren't white and you weren't Croatian, you basically didn't have a use for it. And so I'm just laughing at it. So what I witnessed when we would be embarrassed at different times growing up as kids, you talked about intuition. I intuitively witnessed the pain on people's faces when he would make fun of somebody for being Asian, or he would make fun of, I remember one of the last times before he died, we were having lunch and our waiter had dreadlocks. Now I had been in the islands, right? And he was saying things, not necessarily about the color of his skin, but being a certain gender, this guy with these dreadlocks. And I was like, Dad, here's this man, he died several months later, but here was this man still in his 70s, who I love dearly because he was my dad, but he still had these views that I was so away from. And I had always hoped that one day that I could rub off on him somehow. Maybe I did, I don't know. But my point is it's this conditioning. And one thing that you've made me realize is when you can finally take responsibility for your feelings on how, there is a divine path that attracts love. And I got to tell you, there's been so many angry moments in my lifetime where I'm like, who was that guy? Because it wasn't adding up with my heart. It was my passionate head remembering a trigger that made me angry. And so anger and resentment, and I'm still working on them, that, but that conditioning is what I've learned from you today, is that we've got to come to grips with this conditioning and figure out why we don't act in a loving way. Right. And I'm sorry for taking so much, but I wanted you to get a sense of, that conditioning from my point. And not only did my dad dislike people of color, he disliked other white people. And it was like, Dad, you don't love the Italians? And he'd have a name for them, right? And I was like, as a kid, where does this come from? Where does this, right. But it came from the ghettos of Pittsburgh, where he would have his rear end kicked by all those different nationalities, and he had to be tough. And the whole time I knew him, he was 28-year Army officer. Your dad was a Marine. And I think he told me in the entire time that he was alive, he might have told me twice that he really loved me. And, so I grew up with a younger brother and two older sisters, and we all have our issues today. But here I am at 61 trying to finally come to grips with it. So it's your show. I'm sorry. I just, we're talking about, the things that you're doing, but I wanted you to get a sense of where that conditioning might come from that other side. And I loved him and I miss him dearly. He's been gone now, but it's like, Dad, if I could see him now, 11 years later, how much I've learned this past decade with my own traumatic brain injury and my own DUI and my own coming to grips with sexual assault that I had never talked to with anybody. Now I understand more. And I'd just like to say, Dad, I love you, man. I know the pain that you had growing up, because I could never say this to me. And thank you for teaching me the things that you did, the good and the bad, that I have this power to choose. But anyhow, I love you. And I just wanted you to know that. So
thank you. Thank you, John. And I would say, I love my father dearly. I miss him so much. I wish he were around, to have seen the book launch and to have been here with me after the brain hemorrhage, and to I know how much he gave me, and I know his heart, regardless of the kind of relationship that we had. I characterize my dad in my book as emotionally unavailable. Yeah. And the trauma that I've felt in my life is that emotional unavailability I interpreted as lack of love. And in fact, that was my interpretation, not the truth of his feeling. And you're absolutely right. When we can when we can really own, like take responsibility for our interpretations and our feelings and the way we experience another person and other. When I experience an other, it's me that's experiencing the other, and how I label it, how I judge it, how I interpret it is mostly coming from me. And by mostly, I mean 90%, right? Even if the person is being outrageous, what they're doing is pinging off of something in me that says, oh my gosh, I'm not lovable. Oh my gosh, they think I'm this. Oh my gosh, they don't respect me. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And then the indignation rises up. And one thing I've learned about myself is that anger for me, and I think this is true universally, but I don't know, anger for me is usually a cover for fear. And so when I rise up, when I feel myself rising up, I'm at a very good stage of learning that I got afraid of something. So I'm afraid of the other person discounting me. I'm afraid if I don't answer right, I look bad. I'm afraid. And fortunately for me, I travel in some high consciousness, high vibration circles. And so I can, in the moment, go through the experience. And I'll just say, hold on just a second. A wave is coming up. I'm feeling a lot of fear right now. But I don't let the anger take over as much. And so I just want to thank you, John, for your transparency. And thank you both for this wonderful time and for being on this journey together. And
well, thank you for that. And I just, how can a couple things before we go? It's been fantastic. I feel you. You are definitely a gem. And I know that the world's a much better place because you're on it. And so when I go to sleep tonight, I'm just going to say, Valerie, thank you for helping me see some things. And how can people, do you have a mantra, a Valerie Sheppard mantra that you live by every day?
Oh, there are many. One of mine is when the going gets tough, get going into gratitude. So that's one.
Nice.
So it's not the tough get going. It's not about being tough. Our strength is often in our suppleness and our vulnerability. So when the going gets tough, get going into gratitude. And the other I love, it's a quote that's on my email signature from Seneca: as long as you live, keep learning how to live. So it's wonderful to have all of your credentials. It's wonderful to be at the pinnacle of your career. And from that place, start again. From that place, be curious enough to ask, is there more? Not in my credentialing, but in who I'm being and what I bring, the sweetness that I bring to my life. And therefore, can it overflow from my life into others? Like, as long as you live, keep learning how to live. And
That's
make
awesome.
it a dance.
No, absolutely. I'm thinking of a Watusi or something,
Yes.
What can, how can people find out more about you? They want more information. How can they reach you to find out more about the Hartley Center and more about your book? How can they do that?
So the book website is Happy to Be Me, the title, happytobeme.net. You can purchase the book there for 25% off what you can find it on Amazon. I just want to shout the book. It's won 6 awards.
Awesome.
4 of them for personal development and self-help. It's won 2 golds, a silver, 2 bronze, and a runner-up medal in African-American nonfiction. So I say that to say, if you're wondering if it can help you, some independent reviewers gave it some pretty high marks. So it might be one that you can trust. So I encourage and invite you. And if you feel that you can't, like if you're telling yourself a story, I can't afford it, there's a link on my website where you can download the PDF version for free. So that's there. And if you want some low cost support, my site at patreon.com/Valerie Sheppard is a membership site. And we're putting out a ton of content through that site. You can pick a level that works for you and play with me there.
That's awesome. Well, there you have it, right from Valerie Sheppard, the queen of authentic self-mastery. She's doing some great things. And with the way things are going on in the world today, you know, if we could just clone her, oh my gosh, we could have a whole love army of dancers. And just seriously, you know, all kidding aside, thank you very much for joining Bill and me today. And I look forward to the day. I have to get the book now and until when we can see each other. So in the flesh, you know, that's going to happen. I know it.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you so much, Valerie. What an incredible moment.
Yes.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, John. I love you. Many blessings.
Love you too.
Thanks for what you're bringing to the world and how the divine is dancing in, through, around, and as you and through the show.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of AHO Radio. Information we mentioned is probably in the show notes, but if we missed anything, please let us know and we'll get it added for you. Subscribe to the AHO Radio channel on YouTube to stay connected, and, as always, we wish you health, success, and significance. AHO!